Hey there, my friends. This is Bill McDonald, the Writing Doctor here, and today I want to use a couple of analogies with some metaphors and a simile to kind of help us understand why we might be having struggles teaching writing in 4th, 7th, 9th, and 10th grade as teachers. First question I want to ask you and your colleagues is, are your writing students flowers, beautiful flowers as we see here, or are they petals or perhaps only seeds? Are they bowls with a firm base or foundation, or are they more like colanders where they're full of gaps and holes? Are they caterpillars where we're having to stay at the crawling level, or are they beautiful butterflies that are soaring? And finally, if everything that we learn as teachers is like a prescription, I want you to think of my blood pressure medicine here as the writing prescription, the writing band-aids and medicine. Sometimes we know what to do, we have the tools to do it, and for whatever reason, we have a great medicine and we just don't implement it. So here we go with the first analogy. If your kids are in fact solid bowls, then if you pour all of the learning into them throughout the year, all the curriculum, all the strategies, the activities, then you're going to have a firm foundation if the students were taught editing, revising, grammar, expository, the process of writing expository, open-ended responses. Then when you try to pour into the students throughout the year, then the beautiful flowers here are going to be able to blossom. They're going to be able to grow even more than what they already are. Let me show you the difference. A lot of times, if we have students that come to us with a lack of ability, they might be, instead of on what I call level 8, ready for writing, they might have to come all the way down to level 1. So if you think of all of these different levels in the colander here, if I'm here at the top, then I have the ability to write essays and read passages and be able to answer questions. But for each level you have to go down. If I'm only at the paragraph level, I might have to come here. If I'm at the sentence level, I'd have to go down there. The phrase level, the word level, and all the way down at the letter level. And if your students are there, yes, the test is rigorous, but if you don't come down to the level that your students are at, watch what happens and how it's different. You're going to be having those 8 months to try and pour into them all of the learning that's supposed to take place, and what's going to happen is the same thing that happened with this colander. It's just going to fall through the gaps and the holes, and you might try to invest into each student's life academically, but it's just not going to stay there. So let's take a look at the flowers now for a second. Got some beautiful flowers. I see here this one has 3 parts. So I'm going to think of each of these flowers as one student's ability to do well in either editing, revising, or expository. So let's talk first of all at the editing level. I'm just going to use one flower here. I don't know how to write an essay. So that means that if it's an essay, it might be I can't write an introduction. I might not be able to write a body. I might not know how to write a conclusion. Perhaps your students might not have been taught brainstorming, and as you can tell, I'm starting with the expository here instead of the editing. I'll get to the editing in a minute. If they weren't even taught how to brainstorm or plan, then they might tend to write whatever pops into their head, and that would be a problem because if students do that, then the readers have to grade anywhere between 100 to 250 papers per day, and that's going to be taking away from their ability to usually get 3s and 4s, because the rubric does say for a 4 you have well chosen ideas. Okay, so they come to us with some gaps. So if your students are not on the paragraph level, it might mean they're on the sentence level. So that would be pulling out another petal. If they're not even on the sentence level, if you have some kids that are on the word level, it just kind of keeps going down here. Some kids are on the letter level, and some kids even have trouble with letters. They have dyslexia or dysgraphia, or they just have trouble with letter formations. Or maybe at your school they don't emphasize penmanship even. So all of these things are what can typically happen with an average 4th grader or even a 7th grader. So they come to us looking like this, and as a teacher in the essay portion, we want kids to be able to get to 4 land, but sometimes our 4th graders or our 7th graders are not coming to us even at 2 land or 1 land. They're coming to us at 0 land and lala land, and we're being asked to take them to 4 land as teachers, and we're wondering why it's not happening. Let's go over here to the other petal. Okay, if I am at the word level, then I'm going to be struggling with spelling. I won't know my letter formations. I won't know how to sound things out. If we're allowed to read in the classroom silently, then what's going to happen is the auditory learners are not going to be able to understand how to pronounce the syllables of words and learn the spelling patterns that way, and their ears won't be able to listen to the sounds that they're making when they're reading, and so they won't be able to do well in spelling. Capitalization is at the phrase level, so if a teacher in 3rd, 2nd, 1st, kinder, pre-K, if they're not working on capitalization of proper nouns, first a word in a sentence, the pronoun I, cities and states, teams, buildings, all of those capitalization rules, then that's going to hurt them when they get to the writing grades. Then we get to punctuation. If we're not emphasizing punctuation in every grade level, think, we don't know how to write a complete thought. There's no period. There's no exclamation. There's no question mark at the end of the sentence. I tell kids to think of a sentence like a street. So at the end of every street, there's supposed to be a stop sign called a red punctuation called a period, exclamation, or question mark. If we talk about the yellow punctuation, that's commas when you're slowing down. Yes, comma, no comma, well, comma, city and state that need a comma, commas in a series. If all of that is not there, then they come to us with even more gaps. We have apostrophes and contractions. So if they've never been taught that or guided in terms of what those look like, then their editing ability is going to get even lower. Unfortunately, they even have to work on run-ons, knowing when they have too many words without a punctuation, or fragments, they're putting too much punctuation without stopping. And then finally we get to the level of what we call usage in editing, where they have to learn subject-verb agreement. So if they don't even know what the subject is, the person, the place, the thing, the idea, then they're going to be struggling with subjects. Let's take a look at the predicate, the verb, the action that's being done. Is the predicate, is it a compound predicate? Is it a complex sentence? What kind of sentences are we looking at here? And so here's what your students might come to you in terms of their ability to do editing. And I had a teacher one time tell me, Mr. McDonald, I love your strategies and ideas, but I'm not going to do any of them. And I'm like, why is that? Well, it's because, the test is rigorous and we can't help them on the test. And I said, well, ma'am, this is August. So I want you guys to think of the word rigorous. It's got several letters. Think of rigorous like this. in August, let's make sure everybody can understand letters and penmanship. September, and I'm talking about kids who are at the lowest levels here. In September, let's get to the word level. In October, let's get to the phrase level, and it's called playing catch up for those kids that are several years behind. So we have August, September, October. In November, we'll get our kids to the sentence level. December, the paragraph level. January, passage level. February, essay level, and being able to do editing and revising. And then March, by the time we get to March, then if we're trying to play catch up, we might be able to be at the rigorous level. So if you think of it like this, rigorous is spelled R-I-G-O-R-O-U-N-S. Let's build to rigor and not start with it. Finally, we have our last little petal, the ability to do vocabulary, revising, adding things, adding, removing, and moving content in terms of adding sentences, removing phrases. And since most kids are just doing multiple choice, we might as well just go ahead and take away half of the petals once again when it comes to kids' ability to revise, which is fixing content, because if all we're doing is spending all of our time doing multiple choice, we won't understand the concept of what the rigors of revising is. And so this is just one student, and we have a whole classroom full of students, and so many times our students are getting into our classrooms in the writing grades like this, and so I really recommend that we teach writing at all grade levels, because that's going to cause a problem. So if we don't write across the curriculum, across subjects and grade levels, we're going to have an issue. If we don't have at least 45 minutes to 90 minutes each day of teaching writing, it's going to be another issue. More than half the time in 4th grade and 7th grade should probably be spent on editing, since that's a really big portion of the test, which is what we talked about, the cups, capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, and run-ons and fragments. It's important to build using the ladder from the letter level to the essay level. And finally, many of us, we only work on mentor sentences, which are sentences that are correct, or we just work on sentences that have mistakes, and an editing and revising passage is full of both. Well, there's my analogy. I hope that makes you guys think about some plans for this coming year. Thank you guys, and God bless.